first things first, what do you make of the Rwanda bill?
Well, I think we absolutely welcome the fact that the Prime Minister has tried to stay within those constraints of international law, but is also doing things that are novel and challenging. It recognises the urgency of the situation, but it's a tightrope, and I think it is right that we've asked expert lawyers to look at how far it goes and whether it perhaps could go too far, and we'll know more about that when they come back in a few days' time.
Given the fact, I acknowledge that you're waiting to see what the lawyers say, but would it be fair to interpret what you've just said as you're minded to vote in favour of it?
Well, I think, as I say, we welcome the approach and we welcome the fact that it doesn't challenge important things like the ECHR. And
so you're minded to vote in favour of it at this stage, you think?
It's a little bit too early to say that. We'll be talking about this as a group on Monday. But, as I say, you're right to infer from welcoming that approach that there is something clearly to work with here. And the reason why that international law point is so important is because that's the foundation that allows us to do deals with Albania, to do deals with France, to tackle this issue in ways that are much more diverse, much more extensive than simply the Rwanda policy.
Can I just, I guess, unpick what you're saying a little bit about international law? Because the very first thing that the bill says is the Home Secretary acknowledging that actually I don't think this does comply with the European Convention on Human Rights. And then the PM said that he wanted to go further, but it was the Rwandans who actually were worried that they would be breaking international law. Is it really, like a shining beacon of staying within international law?
Well, I think that's not quite what the PM said. I think what he said and what the approach that's happening here is trying to do is to make sure that this is something that is acceptable to both parties in the treaty. That's how international treaties, of course, would work. But it's also right to acknowledge that this is a novel problem that is being tackled in a novel way, and that is something that reflects the urgency and the importance of the issue. But that is not an excuse for going too far, because, as I say, that principle, international law isn't something to be sentimental about. It's foundational to addressing this issue in the round.
It feels as if the PM is stretching what it means to be within the law somewhat. One line says, this act gives effect to the judgment of Parliament that the Republic of Rwanda is a safe country. So that feels to me like, you're just passing a law to say Rwanda is safe, and automatically that makes it safe. And then just to be sure, later on you say, a court or tribunal can't consider things like whether or not Rwanda might be breaking international laws such as the Refugee Convention. So you're effectively, telling the courts that Rwanda is a safe country because you say so, and then saying, no, they have to just ignore anything that might imply that it's not a safe country. Is that how the law works?
That's why it's important, as I say, that we take genuine legal advice, and I think it's also important not to preempt what that might say. Now, on the other hand, what the government would say is that there are exceptions for individuals to make their own cases built in as a sort of check and balance within this bill. Now, that needs to be examined, but I think it is a sign of the government acknowledging the point that you've just made and realising that it needs to be addressed.
You're the MP for Boston and Skegness. Boston, a place that I've been to a couple of times, the most Brexit-supporting place in the country, lots of concerns about immigration there. They might be wanting you to go a little bit further on some of this stuff, right?
Well, I think the thing that representing that area where you're absolutely right, immigration has been this crucial issue for a decade and more, is that what matters is whether this works. It's not something to be philosophical about. It's something to say, look, we want an approach that will make a difference. And that is not simply about flights to Rwanda. It's about a package of measures. And that's why I think we have to look at this principle of, does it allow us to have an effective deterrent? A deterrent is important, but does it also not jeopardise those really important deals that we've done with places like Albania that mean that some of the arrivals have gone down by 90% from that country? So it's a really important balance, and the package is more important than any one part of it.
I mean, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, resigned because he doesn't think it's going to work.
Well, I think there is clearly, as you say, there is a difference of opinions on will it work. My priority, and I think the priority of all Conservatives, regardless of where they come from on that spectrum that you outlined at the beginning, the priority is on something that works, and that's the thing that I think unites us. There will be differences of opinions on how we do that, but I think that demonstrates that we do have to come up with something that can get through Parliament, can get through all of those potential legal challenges, so that we make a real difference on a model that ultimately is about breaking the business model of people smugglers. That's what this is aimed at.
MPs will be voting on the Rwanda legislation next week. The PM says it's not a confidence vote, but in reality, if he loses this vote, it's game over for him, isn't it?
Well, I think what we'll see next week is that vote on second reading, to use the jargon, on the principle of, do we want to take an approach that is novel, that is brave, but is within international law. I hope that's something that we can all get behind. There will, I suspect, be amendments from a range of other parties, never mind anything else. But that is not the conversation for this week. I think it's important that, as I say, we look at that legal advice, we get through those different hurdles, and then we'll hopefully be able to come up with something that works for everybody and really does address the issue.
Just finally, when's the election going to be?
Well, that's not for me to say, but what I do think is important is, before any election, we have to demonstrate significant progress on not just immigration, but on those important things that frankly fill my inbox more than this issue, around the economy, around the cost of living. Those are the things that I think should dictate when we are asking people to make a judgment on the political parties.